Oh, thank you, Elise. So welcome, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us. It's going to be a very exciting presentation. I had a bit of a sneak peek in, so Abel is going to provide you a lot of very, very cool info. And the fact that we've been able to record it so that we can stream it to you without interruption means that we can all be answering questions for you in the questions window. So just like housekeeping, we got the chat window. If you put it all into the questions tab, that'll help us keep it all going cleanly. On the Katana 3.6 front, it's been done and dusted for a while. We were just cleaning up all the logistics of getting it shipped out to you guys. So now that it's out, we've got some great material on our website, but really the things you got to know about Katana 3.6, we included a really powerful snapping workflow. This is something that Gary and the team really worked hard on. And the thing about Katana being a specialized tool, it means that we could take steps in tools like snapping that were very specific to the workflows that you guys do in look development and lighting. So please do check those out. We also introduced docs into the UI. So now what you can do, you can see on the right-hand side of the image, you've got the parameters pane. So you can take any of your tabs within Katana and lock them to the left, the right, the top, or the bottom. So then when you take anything full screen, you're still left with that. So this is a common workflow you're going to see. This is the monitor layer where you can render directly into the viewer, but you can still have your parameters available to you. So super powerful, all sort of fitting into our vision of how all this can come together for sort of a super rich viewer-driven artist experience. We introduced the Network Material Edit. So this replaces two tools, one called the Network Material Parameter Edit and the Network Material Splice. Those of you who know Katana know that they were powerful, but they weren't the most artist-friendly. So what we've done is taken the power of both of those two tools and combined them into a framework and a node that basically gives you the exact same representation of the network material as you created it in the new Network Material Create node, which we introduced in 3.2. And so that's a great next step. So the other thing for you to keep in mind, new version of 3 to Light that ships with Katana. So, you know, new live rendering, some new texturing tools and tune shading, but it just gives you a nice robust experience right out of the box. If you download our trial today, you can install that with Katana, and there's no configuration. You can just start playing and learning Katana. So if you're new to Katana, we've got you covered from that angle. And I would also encourage you very strongly to join us for our CGRAPH events. Gary will be presenting the next version of Katana and sneak peeks into what that means for this year. And I promise you, you will not regret joining us for that event. So thank you very much for joining us. And I think from there, we will then queue up the video and we'll start joining you guys in the chat and everything else.
Alrighty, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me in this fine morning, at least here in Vancouver, for this lighting and look dev automation in Katana, preparing for success. And these are my personal tips on how to be able to produce more using Katana tools and some of the new Katana 3.6 updates. My name is Abel Vargas. I am a lighter and compositor. I live here in Vancouver and I've worked at a few VFX companies and in the animation companies in this industry. I've worked exclusively as a compositor at DNEG, Method, and Animal, and I've also worked as a compositor at Zoic, and in a different season I also worked in there as a lighter. ImageWorks, Cinesight, and Atomic are the animation companies. Atomic is the one I'm currently working at, and these are the 3 companies that I've worked for that use Katana. And this is my, I'm talking on top of this experience working with in these pipelines. And you might ask me, okay, so these are big companies. How can I use this? What's in this for me as either a smaller company or as a freelancer? How can you get productive and be prepared for success while you're using Katana? And I'm going to tell you that. Better yet, I will show you. For this webinar, I actually built a little short project, if I may call it a short film, but it's very short. This is only 4 shots long. It's called Ground Zero because I had to name it something to make it cool. And in this short, I'm going to, I kind of designed it to be able to use all of these updates for Katana 3.6. That's snapping, docking panels, network material edit, and kind of show it how I would use this in my own pipeline. This is a pretty ambitious project for a single artist. I have 168 assets, over 40 materials. These are 4 shots, and I've done less than 40 hours of work. So if I was working full time in this from Monday to Friday, I'd be done. And I will also show a few tools that I love about Katana that are not an update for this version, but I feel like we should all be very familiar with them, which are variables, the monitor layer, and some collections. So there's 3 key points that I'd like you to take away from this webinar. And the first one is to always consider volume. And if you can expand on the work you've done. Every good artist can use any software and any technique really just to create great work. But if you take great work and now you need to expand that into a whole sequence, a whole episode, a whole feature film, then you need to consider volume. And a volume and a way of working that will preserve this quality of work that you've dedicated in this one shot and turning that into multiple shots. So this volume means a different type of organization and a different type of considering what's coming up in your way. And of course, with more industry experience, you can already know what you're to expect most of the times. So there are a few things that you can do ahead of time, and I'm going to go over that very soon. And the third thing is just consider the bottlenecks in your pipeline. I feel like before Katana came along and was like widespread in the industry as it is today, one of the biggest pipeline bottlenecks were lighting. Lighting and rendering has always been like this, where everything slows down, and also that slows down compositing. So how do we solve this bottleneck in your pipeline? So when you look at your own workflow and how these steps are laid out, you have to consider where your time is really being spent on. And I'm hoping that you can spend more time doing artistic things over being stuck in pipeline problems and doing repetitious work. And I feel like Katana really solved that for Lookdev, lighting, and connecting that into a render farm. So without further ado, here's the short, and then I will come back and then I will break down the most important steps that I took to be able to deliver this. Alrighty, there was some epic sound effects that I I bought just to put on this short. I felt like sound is something very important to to add to this VFX sci-fi show, so I put that on. If you only like the opening credits, that it's the only thing I didn't do. So go to the internet, I guess, look for better templates. So first thing I want to give credits. All the buildings, the roads, everything you see there, the structure part is they are Kitbash 3D assets. Kitbash is a big time saver, and one of the things that when I talked about like finding what's your bottleneck, for me is assets. I'm not a modeler and I want to build these worlds, so Kitbash 3D does this amazing service that they sell these products and these packages where they have a theme. So this one that I use the most is called Future Slums. And the sad part of Future Slums is that it really looks like São Paulo, Brazil today. So it's not really really future. It's present for me, I guess. So the work that they do is really important, especially for us lighters who don't model. So take a look at their website. The ship, this amazing design, was done by my good friend Leo Kreiding. He is a senior modeler at Method Studios, and he has done amazing creatures for Godzilla, for Thor. So this guy is as good as you can get in this industry, and I'm very thankful for him to actually doing this ship for me, and he's always very helpful and a very good friend of mine. The HDRs that I used are from HDR Maps. This is a website that sells very good HDR, so you can go there and take a look at it. And Redshift is the render engine I chose for this project, only because my home computer is designed for GPU rendering, and I really like Redshift. I've done a few freelance works with it, so I'm very comfortable with the tool, and they have a pretty nice integration with Katana. The best integration with Katana is easily 3D Light that comes with Katana, so I'll definitely use more 3D Light in the future. This one I kept using Redshift. And one very important credit I need to give is to Foundry's community. I depend on them. I depend on this community for most of the things that I do, especially all these scripts that I've developed for this project. There were people in the community are always very nice and friendly, and you can see, like, this is the most recent screenshot. I'm there right at the top, and I'm everywhere, always asking my questions there. And thank you, Jordan, for being there for me most of the times. And Gary, awesome person. He helped me on all of my scripts to get this done. So I do owe him a keg of beer. I promised, and one day, I hope after this pandemic is done, I can come to London and pay him that keg of beer. I hope he likes beer, I guess. So let's see how this is done. The first thing is preparing the assets to go into Katana, right? And I did one thing that was very important for me in this project is to add an attribute to all the alembics with the shader name, to every object in each alembic with the shader name, so I can do automatic assignments in Katana. So you see me here opening the assets, the packages, and these are how they come. So I actually center everything and export one by one. This one I did one by one just to show how it would look, this whole process of if I didn't have a script for this. So I spent a little bit of time doing this recording just to show that it can't be done by hand, but I actually have a script that will export all of these assets in one go and add the attributes that with the shader name for each shape. And you can see this script if you're interested in my GitHub. And I'll put the link. I think it will show up very soon, and I will show it once again before this presentation is over. So this is, I'm generating all these assets and adding these attributes, and the Kitbash 3D assets, they already come with this attribute, but for Leo's ship, and it's tons of objects that are in there, I created those attributes myself and then exported everything to Katana. So now that everything was ready to go to Katana, I could actually start working. This was all just prep work, right? Okay, so let's quickly talk about the things that are very important to think about productivity and volume, and I'll keep talking about, like, the things I find interesting and the cool new updates that Katana 3.6 has. For the updates, it will probably be more connected to lighting, but I just want to go over how you can work in volume in your Lookdev recipe. And the first thing to keep in mind is collections. Collections are one of the most powerful things you can do in Katana, and once you start working with them, it's really hard to go back to doing assignments by hand, even if it's not a lot of materials. The way collections work is that they are just little containers of scene graph locations. You can put paths, just groups, or you can go all the way down to the mesh. It's up to you, the way you want to work. If you have a character that keeps using the same props, you can do a collection that is the character and the props, so you can easily just create a new render layer and assign that one collection that it will always contain the character and the props. For example, the way I'm working here is working with materials because I'm just working with the Lookdev now. And since I have this thing coming from, let me change this asset real quick and get something with more variation. Tower, there you go. So looking from here, this is how the asset comes in, and it has a bunch of objects, and these objects they have different materials for them. The way we brought it from Maya is not this guy there. Every shape in this object, in this asset, has a arbitrary attribute called max material name that came with the kitbash 3D assets. They probably didn't use this for Katana. They were thinking of Max at the time, probably. I don't know. But I created my own for the ship that Leo graciously lended me to use in this project, and I created a material name tag without the max and just added the name of the shader assigned to it from Maya. So now I have all of my my shapes with the shader name, and based on these names here, I'm creating my collections, and these collections are a very powerful but simple line of code, which is here. When you look at what this line is saying, is for anything recursively, anything, literally anything inside world geo, so we got here root world geo, anything inside underneath this group here, it will collect anything that has the attribute called max material name, and which has the value of concrete mix. So once I select these guys, what this line of code returns are these objects. And the cool thing is that this is not relying on the name of the object. So this could be duplicated, change names, go into version 345 or sidewall B. You can have anything, and a lot of freedom in naming, even though you have to have a naming convention to use in different stages. But at least for here, I'm just relying on this value here. And the way I test this very easily without having to render anything is I create all of these, one per material. And you see, like, it only changes this last thing. So they're all looking for the same attribute and just matching to whatever the name of the attribute contains, of the shader in this case. So once I have created one per material, and this kind of goes back and forth, I will import new materials that have a different material that I haven't anticipated. So I can just create this collection and change this name here, and boom, now I have the trash bags inside a collection. And the way I test this is creating these viewer object settings. And the viewer object settings only affect the viewer, so it doesn't affect the render at all. But the cool thing about this is that if I can add a color just for the viewer. So this is a very simple thing, and in Hydra you can actually create a Hydra material and assign the texture to these things, so you can actually see a very accurate depiction of what the material actually is in the render time. But for me, I'm just using a simple color, and it's a random color. Sometimes I try to find a color that I think in my mind makes sense. Emissive material, I mean yellow because of light, I don't know. So, but it doesn't matter, it could be random. And once I create these objects, the only thing I'm doing here is changing their colors. It's the only thing. I have nothing else set. And once you look at it, you can see that all of the materials are assigned. So I know what's emissive. I know at least what's concrete, and I got this blue for the glass. So you can see if your collections are working. And the way I make sure that everything is contemplated by my collections is I have this viewer settings for everything. So everything that is inside the geo first gets this pink color. So if I have something that isn't contemplated in my collections or a viewer object settings, then this thing turns pink. So if this object is okay, and you can see that there's no pink in it, then I move on to another asset, and the new asset comes in and say it doesn't have maybe this concrete white material, I've never seen it before, then I'll open the material. It will have some of the color assignments because it's not based on name, it's based on the attribute. But now I can very easily see that I'm missing a material. So I'll just select that geo, look at this attribute, and say, oh, okay, I didn't create a concrete mix white collection. So I'll go back here, create a concrete white collection, make sure that when I select it and it's selected and it's here, let's select something else so you can see, boom, and it selects the material. You can see there it's working, and then I can create a viewer object settings, choose a random color, and now I know this collection is taking everything. So I will go through a few of the objects, but not all of them, because there are too many. It should go one by one. I could, but I didn't. I just take a sample, and I trust statistics to make the rest, especially when you're doing Lookdev for 200 buildings, which is what I did in this case, 168 to be more precise. So this is how I work with these automatic assignments, right? Just by having this object settings, testing my collections, then I know that that I have a collection for everything. And these collections are a line of code that would just get the name of the shader that I have in this attribute, and it makes it very, very easy to go around the changes of names, of changes in locations. Maybe in modeling they grouped things in version 2 that weren't grouped before, but it will still be assigned the correct material because it doesn't matter. It matters only that it has that attribute. After you have these collections set, and I know that they work because I have the viewer object settings, then I know I can work with my materials. And the way I work with, I Control Enter here, it's very obvious that what I use the most is actually child materials. And I have 1 material, 2, 3, and 4 materials in this. This is just a material that will be assigned to anything that doesn't have a material. So, and this is deletable. The way I do this is based on my textures and my shaders that I know of. I'll create a material that is the most versatile possible material, and this makes it into a very simple material. On these kitbash assets, I have only 3 textures per material. I have roughness, diffuse, and bump. So I created a very simple material that just anticipates what I need to change the most. So I know that I have to change this diffuse map very often, so I promote this diffuse map to be editable on the top level, and I do the same for roughness and bump here. And if I look at the image, then you see it appears as bump in the group maps, and I created these guys. And I also came here to the material and say, okay, so I want to do also work with the weight, and it will look, and I named it reflection weight because it's inside the reflection. They can have double similar naming, so you can have weight and weight having the same name. So I named it reflection weight, and as the group base properties. If I go to the top level now, press E, then I can see that inside base properties, which is the group I created, I have reflection weight and reflection roughness, and I also have maps for these. And now that I have this uber material, if you can say that, for this one kit, and it will pretty much only work for this one kit, unless all of the kits always have just these changes to them. And then I can create child materials. And child materials are a very powerful concept, that a child material is a clone of this material, but you have the ability to change whatever you expose from the base material. This is what makes it very powerful to work in bulk, in volume, is that if I do any changes to this material that are not overridden by the child materials, these changes will trickle down to all of the child materials. So if you have a general note of all these materials are too shiny, for example, then you can go into the main material, turn down the reflection, and then all these changes will trickle down. Say, now with this color correction here, I know that I can take all of the diffuse maps and take them down. I can take their gamma down by half, and now I have every single child material will be affected by this new change because it's not even exposed, and you can override it. But even if I do have this exposed to the top level and I have an override, then it won't change anything that is overridden already. So I can come here and you can see that things that I overrode with new textures, and I kept the bump from the original. Here I have to change all of them, and a base in the base properties, I didn't have to touch much because most of it is far enough from camera that it doesn't make any difference at this point. But it's there to work all the materials individually, but they are all always checking back with the parent. So this child materials is something that is very powerful to use when you're working in volume. And once I have created one material or one shader that I needed, especially based on my collections here, then I'm ready to do assignments. And with my material assignments here, this is a stack of all these material assignments that I have. So I have a base material, which will apply the base material, which is a pink material as well, just so I can see that something doesn't have an assignment. I have this being applied to all, and these are overriding it by the actual assignments that I need. So I have this concrete mix material, the white material, which is here, and it's being applied to anything that is inside the concrete mix white collection, which is driven by a line of code that will take anything that has this attribute with that name concrete mix. So this is how you make things work in volume. This concept is one of the things that allowed me to work and create this whole little short film in so little time. It's because I use the power of these automatic assignments to quickly go over all of my assets. And if I have a new version I need a new version for these KLFs, then I have this very simple script here that it's on my GitHub, and I will put the link here somewhere. And this script, it basically runs recursively through every asset inside my model folder, and it will bake the KLF inside the KLF buildings. And I have an example folder here that I created just to show you. And if I run here, and I just want to make sure that I'm looking at the right things here. So I got the viewer. So if I run the script, it goes into that folder and bakes the KLF for each asset. So I don't have to even do this by hand, right? It went through, 60 assets in one go, and now I have a new version for the KLF. So any changes are very easy to be updated when you have this thing going on. So using automatic assignments is part of being prepared for success. So you should also keep that in mind when you're working with collections and doing assignments for textures. And you can anticipate these massive changes and new versions and working with multiple assets just with a simple recipe. Here on the lighting side is where we can actually play a lot with these new updates that Katana 3.6 have. And I think one of the things that I use the most is the snapping. I designed this project to be able to stress test these tools, and I felt like doing the layout in Katana, even though it's not meant for it, would be a nice opportunity to stress test this tool. And now shot one has this blank canvas. Basically, I have the road here, which is just at the curve from the first shot, and see like my camera is there, and all the buildings are on the origin of this map, which is in the middle of the crater that I very simply created for this tutorial, so for this webinar. So now with my tools, with these buildings in the center stage, then now I know I have to place them in my map. So the way I do this, and first thing I use the docking of the scene graph. For me, being able to full screen and have a panel that you choose, and it could be anything. I could be full screen and keeping my Python tab or the attributes on the other side. Then if I can full screen and work and still be able to pick the buildings here, that's such a great thing to do. So I can actually have the tools that I choose to have all full screen and in my screen instead of having just one at a time, which was the current way of working up until now. And I feel like I've used this a lot in conjunction with the monitor setting here. It's experimental, but I approve it. I only used monitor for this whole thing, and I have used it since the last version, I think, when it came out. But it keeps proving so useful, and I'll show you how it works. And now I have my Hydra here. So basically, the way I started doing this, I started just snapping it, and I just want to show how this would be done before without snapping, right? So I'll take this first building here, and I want to put it on the corner of this street. And let me open this guy. Okay, so I want to put this building there. The way this works is I would probably put it into a nice vantage point. I kind of move this here, maybe look from the top, drag it here. But now it's sunken in the world, so I have to put this here. And so it's a little bit of a, I mean, it's business as usual, I guess. Like, this is how we've always done it before. We had the ability to snap, so I'm used to this. I'm glad I don't have to use it anymore. But so this is like a way of doing it, right? And when I look here from my camera, okay, my render cam, let me turn this off for a second. So, okay, so now I have this building here, and then I can just look at it. It's probably facing the wrong way. Okay, boom. Okay, let's do this like that for the time being. Okay, so I have this one building there. Now, what I can do instead is use snapping. And with snapping, I don't even need the perspective view here. I can just full screen here on my monitor. Take this, snapping, and I'm going to snap to the surface, and the surface is here, and boom. It's like magic. And I can't tell you how much I like this. So I'm going to start a live render, so we can play with this a little bit. Boom, live render. Full screen this again. Turn on this monitor layer, and this is how I did all of these shots. I'm looking from the camera point of view, and I started just dragging my assets from zero to here. And as the render starts, I can see. Okay, there you go. So I have this, and I can just activate the live render for this asset and wait for the updates here. Oh, wrong one. Boom. There you go. So now I can kind of place this interactively, and then I can turn this off since I know it's on the ground plane. Okay, so this is filling this piece. Let's put a building here in front of the camera, and even without needing to see the render itself, I want to get that one building, I want to snap it. Now it's here, and I know now I can even adjust. If I knew where it was rotated, but if I open here, boom. Okay, so I can now adjust it so we can see, and we can drag here a bit, maybe. Let's see a little of this front side. Boom, done. And now I know, just without rendering, because I can see my geometry overlaid on top of my render, I can already tell. I mean, I could activate this and see the result, or I could just close it and move on to the next building. I'm going to activate it, and now I can go back to just the bounding box, and now it's there. So every single building can be easily dragged with this in this mode. And I don't know if I'm using this, boom, and drag it until it touches, and I can see the geometry, so I know. I mean, I can even intersect them if I want to. That's how accurate you can be using this. So back to bounding box, let's activate this, boom. Now it's in there, right? So all of these buildings were placed just like that, and it doesn't matter that this is in front. I can drag it here, and I keep dragging all the buildings. So this is basically how I did it. Of course, like some of the buildings I didn't like as much, or I had to change, but once they're kind of like around this this avenue, curve, highway thing, then I can come here to the viewer, and I can start moving these things around if I want to dock this full screen, use the monitor, and work in layout using snapping, and you don't have to keep getting out of here, going on, selecting the building, and just dragging it by hand and hoping that it's going to be on the right place. Cool, thanks. So these are 3 updates in one go. So the last update that Katana 3.6 have that I wanted to touch on is something that influences my work as a lighter, every day. So whenever I have to do material edits, I can only use theoretically, I can only use whatever the Lookdev artist exposed for me to use in lighting. But sometimes you need to add a different thing that is not anticipated here. So instead of kicking it back and have that to be exposed, or use a couple of different tools to be able to edit this material inside lighting in a user interface that is not very intuitive, Foundry created this network material edit node that will not only let you edit the exposed parameters, but it also lets you jump into the original material and add something new to this the material graph. So now for this one material here, for the shot number 2, it was getting too bright. So I just came in here, added a color corrector, and pushed the gamma down by a lot. So just to adjust that for that one shot. So this makes in material override so much easier and so much more intuitive than how it used to be. So props to Foundry for kind of pushing the artist friendliness of these tools. And from now, when I look at this material, it's very easy to see what I've changed. There's a green node here that is that it signifies it's a new thing. The yellow ones were overridden somehow, and the gray ones weren't touched at all. So it's very fast. You can very easily see what has been changed for this material, and still using the same user experience that the Lookdev artists have. So this is a very nice update, especially for us in lighting when we need to do these small changes, and this makes it more intuitive to work with than how it used to be. Like, it used to be a more adventurous path you need to take to edit these materials, and now anyone can open this and edit a material in this intuitive way and color-coded way, which is really nice. So lastly, I want to talk about environment variables. And this is not new in Katana, this has been here for a while. And for me, when you're working in volume, or whichever volume you're working, if it's 10 shots or if it's 50 shots in a sequence, the environment variables are one of the most powerful things, and it was the thing that convinced me the most of always working with Katana as much as possible and as much as I can. And I have a few examples here, and I think that the most basic example is a variable switch. You can create a variable here in the project settings, variables, and if you know Katana, you know this very well. And you can create a bunch of them that can drive not only the shot, you can drive render quality, you can drive a bunch of little changes that you want to have in your script. But now I created just this variable shot, and if I turn this off and I change this now to shot 2, for example, then you see that my whole layout will change. And even my camera changes because it's all being driven by this variable switch. So if you look at the node graph in here, when I change to shot 2, then it highlights where it's going. So now I know that shot 2, the environment variable says, the environment variable is basically saying, it's basically looking at the variable called shot. And if this variable, the value of this variable is shot 1, then you activate the branch shot 1, and so on for 2, 3, and 4. So this is a very, very straightforward way. This is you don't have to do any development for this to work. This comes built in Katana. Katana is made for this, and it makes it so much easier to add logic to your scripts. When you have this setup here with an environment variable, I can work with as many shots as I can wrap my head around in one script. If I am organized enough, I could work in 50 shots in just one recipe. So you can work with this variable, this global variable here, and you can even render based on the global variable. You can send this off to the farm saying, I want to render with the variable shot 2 active, shot 3 active. This has applications even in your render farm. So you can have one recipe being used to render multiple shots at once, because all you need to do is pass a different argument for the shot variable name. So you can render shot 1, 2, 3, and 4 at the same time with just one recipe. And this is very powerful. Another nice way of doing this is not only using global variables, but you can also use variables, local variables. So I have local variables that I've created here for these branches, which are the bike and the environment branch. And you can name the variable whatever you want as long as it's the same. So I have a render layer with a value of bike, and then I have the render layer with the value of environment. So this identifies this branch here as environment and this branch here as a as the bike. So if you're rendering from the branch, you can create a variable switch that is not connected to the global variable, but it's connected to this local variable that you created in your recipe. So it looks for the render layer variable, and if the render layer is variable is bike, then you activate the bike branch, and if it's the environment, then you activate the environment branch. And so now we're starting to add so much more logic to it, because now on shot 2, the environment variable will do this, or which in this case is nothing. But if I change for shot 3, for example, now we know that on shot 3, so we're nesting logic here. So first we have the shot, and now with shot 3, the environment layer will have this override that will only work for the environment layer, just because when it renders from here, it will take that path. And nesting inside this logic, I also use a variable enabled group, which is just like a variable switch, but it will enable based on just one parameter, and will disable if this parameter is not met. So because this is shot 4, it's grayed out, so it's not active. So anything you put here, you can just delete the whole scene, prune the whole scene. But if the prune is here, it will not prune anything if it's not shot 4. So with the variable enabled groups, I can also do change based on the shot on the branch of the environment. So once you start adding this to your workflow and the use of variables, you can create optimizations like this. I have my lighting overrides here for per shot, but I also have optimizations. I have prunes that are removing assets from different camera points of view. I have the transform, moving just one asset just for one of the shots. And so you can start to add shot level overrides in this one recipe, and if you gather enough of them, then basically you can have a whole sequence being driven by this variable logic, and that it makes it easier for any future updates that you only have one scene. You can render everything from one scene. You can, if there's a new material or a new shader or a new animation, you can easily open this, and this will be available to be rendered for all of the shots. So if I have a new if I have a new animation for the hover bike, which I did because in the first few shots I didn't animate the wings, but for the shot 4 I had to go in and animate the wings. So I just updated here, and now I have this new animation, even though it doesn't change anything for the first shots, but now I have this animation available for the 4 shots. So if I render this again, all of these shots will have a new animation. So I can have another layer of animation. Say I had a rough passive animation, which is basically what I did, and this, as far as I got you, it's a rough passive animation. But if this animation changed to being a lot more finessed through all of these shots in the path that the bike takes, then I can just update this alembic with this animation, and now I can batch render all of these in one go with this new animation for the sequence. So using variables is one of the most powerful things you can use in Katana, and it's really what allows you to work in volume. As a lighter, before working with Katana, I've had to go into work Saturday and Sunday just to update 30 shots, new cameras, new frame range, and put it on the farm one by one. And Katana allows you to do that with no development. This is built in Katana. You don't have to hack Katana to make it work. So Katana is a software that I really like because it allows me to do more lighting than the non-subjective repetitive tasks of the everyday. And by working with Katana, I'm able to be more productive, and I'm more prepared for success. If this short done in less than a week of work has pleased a client and they hire me to do a whole 30 seconds spot with a bunch of new scenes, then I'm ready to go. So this is being prepared for success, or at least I know if it's a whole new project, then I have the logic already. I understand how to work in volume, and I understand how to deliver more than one artist would naturally do without being able to use these tools. So be prepared for success. Be prepared to do more than you are required at the moment, and learn how to do these bigger projects by anticipating these bigger needs and bigger overrides. So thank you so much for coming with me in this ride of pipeline productivity considerations, and I hope you liked it. Let's go for some Q&A. I'm excited for this. Thank you.